What's up, everyone? I wanted to just quickly talk about something I saw in a tweet today about fighting games and kind of their accessibility, or at least when it comes to being mainstream. So, someone posted on Twitter, came across this post while Googling fighting games thoughts. It said back in the 90s, fighting games were popular because they were mainstream, lots of people played them because they were fast and exciting, they had a low barrier to entry. It didn't take much practice to be able to throw a fireball consistently. The death of fighting games was an over-obsession with frame data by which someone with far too much time on their hands would subvert the actual gameplay into letting them wreck anyone who was less obsessive than they were. Then fighting games were created, which specifically catered to that tiny niche of players, which only further alienated the mainstream audience. Tournaments exacerbated the problem by glorifying the weird stuff at the expense of anything reasonable. So this is usually, Let's finish the entire tweet first, actually. So, someone said, fighting games died, MK11 was the best-selling MK game yet, hype for Street Fighter 6 is as high as ever. And then someone else said, game of the year in 2019. Not fighting game of the year. So here's the deal. So this is really kind of nuanced, to be honest, because anytime something is created, over time, things are going to be found out, right? Like, for example, fatalities used to be a secret hidden thing in MK, right? It was secret and no one knew the codes to do the fatalities. Sometimes people didn't even realize there were only 2 fatalities per character. You know, that's how, like, mysterious it was. That's what MK was about, right? Obviously, now MK is not like that at all. Like, we know all the characters are going to be announced. There's no secret hidden character. You can go online and instantly know that Frost is unlockable via story mode, right? So obviously, like, that's not going to be the case now. Compared to before, I'm sorry, like, in certain situations, we're just going to have knowledge. Like, frame data is a perfect example of this. Frame data is not something we have to obsess over now, because we have access to it by literally just typing in MK11 frame data online, or even just looking at the game menu. So this is kind of like an unfortunate thing that happens over time. Games get discovered, things get figured out, information gets easier to access, things like that. Now, what I did want to talk about is 2 other things. The first one, with fighting games being mainstream. People will say all the time that, oh, you're too good. The game, I don't have time to grind the game and get good at the game. I just want to have fun, right? I'm not saying there's not a place for that, but what I am saying, I guess in this particular video, is that if someone wants to obsess over a game and grind the game, they have the right to do that too. Just because casuals want to have fun and they want basically everyone to go in blind, that's pretty much what it comes down to. Is like, you have a group of people who want to get good at a game because they want to study and understand it and enjoy it that way. Then you have another group of people who just want to play to have fun, and they want the mysteriousness of the game, whether it be frame data, gameplay, whatever, characters, to drive the fun of the game. I think there's a place for 2 of these, right? Like, obviously casual, the way that MK11 does things with the casual tower, or with the towers and the story mode and the consumables and the crypt. Even the crypt is a perfect example of mysteriousness and discovery. I think that it can coexist. I think using those modes to convince casuals to play their game is definitely definitely a thing you can do. Now, with that said, my main issue isn't even with this kind of statement. My issue is the reason why we're seeing fighting games still not be mainstream isn't because the casuals aren't having fun when it comes to the pro players or the high level players doing well. They can coexist, and the high level players can enjoy the same game as the casual players. The problem is, we're not having modes for casual players. When I got in KOF 15, The practice mode didn't even have a side switching ability. It doesn't even have the basic functions of the current fighting game standard, right? Now, obviously, rollback netcode is a good addition, but we should have had rollback netcode years ago. Like, it's sad that MK is the first game to do that. Like, all games should have that at this point. Basic modes for casuals, like things like auto combos, easier controls, like Street Fighter 6 is doing a great job with this, making modern controls for players to get into the scene. Making things easy at first, and then making you interested in the game to want to try the harder things is what makes a good fighting game. Like, this is clear with MK11. There are so many players that have played, they started as casuals, they were just playing towers, or just playing story mode. Now they're grinding Mortal Kombat 11 competitively, right? This happened with me with MK9. I was just trying to learn a combo, and I didn't play competitively, but I got really into the game. So my whole point that I'm trying to make here is that, like, this isn't a problem. I don't think this is a problem with the competitive community. I don't think this is a problem with the casual community. I think the problem that we have is literally that we keep trying to combine the communities together in one game, when we can have one game separate both communities and then both enjoy it. And maybe when the casual finally is like, you know what, I kind of want to take this to another level, you know, they get really interested. Oh, what's that Dragon Punch input? I've never done that before. That's a pretty cool input that you can do to play competitively. Or maybe they I guess locking people out of moves is probably not a good example. So maybe like they watch someone online and they're playing their favorite character and they're a competitive player, and that gets them interested, and then they want to learn the complex inputs and stuff like that, not do auto combos, right? I think that these are really good ways to get people into the competitive scene, and I think that casual players can enjoy it alongside competitive players. But if we're going to have this, games like KOF need to have really full-fledged story modes. Like, they need to have not the just basic features. They need to have things like 1v1 mode in KOF just for casuals, so they can get used to playing their characters. It doesn't have to be a main focus. The main focus could still be the 3v3 teams, which is KOF has always had, but making the game easier. Came thing with like Street Fighter. Street Fighter can have a modern control setting. That's fine. As long as the classic controls remain the most competitive standard for competitive players, modern controls would be an easy way for people to get into the scene. Now, I'm not saying that maybe this controls should change entirely. I'm not saying that, or shouldn't change entirely. But what I am saying is that that's an example of being able to get casuals into the scene to enjoy the characters in the game and slowly get them into the competitive scene if they want to do that. They can stay casual if they want. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. So the whole point that I'm trying to make here is that the games have changed and competitive scene has changed fighting games, but that happens with every genre ever. There's not a single genre where there hasn't been some competitive attachment to it, and over time we haven't fully discovered the game, like understand and know how the game plays, right? That's just something that's going to happen over time. But that doesn't mean casuals can't enjoy the game, and there aren't ways that the developers can make the casuals, or can have it to where the casuals will enjoy the game. I think that's the main issue with this statement, and it's not the fact that we figured the game out. It's more of, we need modes that convince casuals to have fun while the pro players or the high level players play over here in this corner. But anyway, that's all I want to talk about today. Have fun playing fighting games and have a good fight.